All right, we will get started. We might have a few more people join us as we get going. Thank you everyone for joining us this morning for our weekly Strategy for Success webinar. We are joined by Kyle Pearsall with Wells Fargo Bank for part 2. He'll be touching on marketing and capital considerations. We're so excited to continue to be offering these programs weekly, and we are so thankful for the support from the industrial development of the city of Chandler to help us to put programs like this on. Thank you all for joining us today. So Kyle is a business development officer at Wells Fargo for the greater Phoenix area. He acts as a strategic growth partner for local small businesses, and his area of expertise range from basic business accounts to complex lending products. Kyle grew up here in Ahwatukee and went to college at Grand Canyon University, where he played soccer, and in his spare time, he enjoys biking, hiking, and golfing. Kyle, I'm going to turn it over to you. And just a quick reminder to everyone in the session, if you do have any questions at all, please feel free to post those in the chat and we will share those questions with Kyle at the end of the session.
Awesome. Thank you, Carly. Thank you so much. I will share my screen and then we'll get after it. Cool. Can you guys all see the PowerPoint here?
Yes.
Excellent. So yeah, last time, if those of you that were on my presentation last time, kind of went around and really spoke about how business owners are approaching COVID, kind of how they feel during the pandemic, kind of dig more into the meat and potatoes today. Talk about, how you can approach marketing or change your marketing strategy, and then also talk about really what I specialize in, capital considerations, how you should manage your cash right now, how banks might look at loans differently than they would, 6 months ago. And I'm happy to answer any questions around, that the credit policy or how it might have tightened up. So how we get into marketing, like I said, we kind of talked a lot about how people's lives are changing, both as business owners and customers. So the way that these people, our customers interact with us is really going to change as a result. So in the first call, I really talked about how to change your value proposition, how to maybe shift your product to make it more COVID friendly, maybe more convenient during the pandemic. So for the marketing, I think it's important to convey that the same questions get asked, right? What should I change? What should be tweaked? How should I be selling my product now or my service now? So the biggest thing to look at is your message, which is the message you want to send to your customers. And that's either through, your marketing effort, whether it's digital or maybe you're more old school, you call and email to get your customers. But the main questions you really want to ask are, do you want your marketing to focus on keeping existing customers, or are you looking to attract new customers? That's a big question to ask at this time. And do you want to focus on winning customers back who might have left? I mean, if you had a downfall the first couple months of the pandemic and maybe lost a couple of customers to competitors, what can you do to be getting those customers back? And how should you be interacting with the general public in regards to how do I build positive brand awareness during this time, and what could I be doing to help myself do that? So, I mean, a basic example that we give is, let's just say a flower shop, right? And you're kind of worried that, people's concern about traveling could lead couples to cancel or reschedule wedding plans, right? So if your audience is brides, as a flower shop owner, you do weddings, your main audience is brides, and obviously they're stressed out. They can't have their wedding. In this case, from a marketing standpoint, what could you do, right? I mean, maybe you could offer a discount to weddings that continue. Kind of think outside the box on how you can keep business and not have to go along with the flow of, okay, everyone's canceling and kind of freak out. A lot of that has to do with, like I said, just thinking outside the box. And if you don't have a digital presence, if you're on, Facebook or LinkedIn, we found that if you mention COVID-19, or not even a promotion, but just really anything that mentions the pandemic or COVID-19, you'll get 30% more exposure and engagement in your posts. So that's something to think about. And really next, you want to consider how to convey the message, right? So the need to socially distance has really created a major shift towards digital communication. So since the most effective marketing target customers are where they are, consider digital marketing, because we used to be able to go everywhere, but now we're kind of constricted with social distancing. So you can really reach anyone with our phones. I wouldn't really ignore traditional marketing. Like if you're a restaurant or You know, I have a customer who's a printer, and they still are doing very well. They're doing a lot of the traditional marketing digitally, and as well as just, you know, calling vendors. But I have found that digital marketing is getting way more important. So when it comes to digital, you're given multiple ways to convey your marketing message, and that can be on your own website or even other people's websites. And then now is a really good time to really get your digital presence in order. So if you didn't have a digital presence before, it's a great time to start, because a lot of people that did have that digital presence before the pandemic are really restarting it and kind of building from scratch. So so it's a great time to get on. If you don't have a LinkedIn, maybe start a LinkedIn. If you're not doing any digital marketing, try sending out some email campaigns. I'll touch on that soon, but then maybe look into like Google Ads or different, you know, pay-per-click websites you could advertise from. So once you kind of figure out how your vessel for marketing, you want to think about how you'll measure the success. So my role, for example, my role at Wells Fargo is really acquisition. So I'm doing cold calls and selling to small businesses every day. And I have maybe a list of 100 to 200 businesses that I want to target in the greater Phoenix area. It would work great if I was able to contact all of those customers, but how do I track it, right? I mean, if I call everyone once, the likelihood of me getting in touch with everyone that I want to is very small. So I think it's really important that whether you are emailing customers, whether you somehow are sending out, you know, mail merges, or really whatever you're doing from a marketing standpoint, you need to track it and say, okay, I called this person X amount of times, didn't get an answer. Because what that's going to do over time is show you, okay, I like email. Like, let's say email is the best way for me to market. On average, it takes me 8 emails to have a customer see my content. If you don't have that information, you might be sending 4 emails. So I think it's really smart to think about how you can track your marketing and tie it to ROI. You know, are my efforts actually getting me business? Because that's what it's all about, right? And along with that comes budgeting for marketing. If you already have a budget for marketing, maybe think about changing it. I mean, does it need to change? If you're going more digital, maybe that will cost a little bit more money. But on the flip side, if you're more traditional, like in my job with Wells Fargo, just, you know, classic cold calling and emailing, you might not need to tweak that much, or even you know, really pay any out-of-pocket cost to send those emails. It's more of a time opportunity cost. So the main thing here is, if you're thinking about cutting back on marketing, you're not the only one. I think about 70%, yes, it says right here, 70% of digital ad buyers did cut back in Q1, and 63% have changed their message. And that is really what it's all about. I mean, we should always be marketing as business owners, but let's make sure our message is consistent to what we're dealing with in the world. And I think it's, from a marketing and sales standpoint, I mean, the pandemic has been really rough on us, but above all, it gives us a commonality. So whenever you call someone, we're all going through the same thing, and it makes it a lot easier to find that common ground at this time. And lastly is really just action steps to build a marketing plan. So really just an advertising plan moving forward. The biggest one out of this is just a marketing message, and build your marketing message with specific goals, your audience, and your key selling point in mind. And then update your digital presence. So like your website and your social media channels, you're going to want them to reflect any new messaging that you have at this time. And then lastly, really just figure out whether you want to spend money on ads or start building actual campaigns yourself, right? So you don't want to start building a ton of campaigns, get halfway through and say, oh, I should have paid for this. You know, set something up front and really stick with it and run its course, because you never know how well it will work until you actually go through with it. So now that I touched a little bit on the marketing side, I'm really going to touch on my favorite topic here, is the capital considerations, which is really just money. And it might be the most pressing concern for a lot of you on the call today, but really just let you know about multiple options available to you, whether it's, you know, the government sponsored initiatives or maybe some more industry backed funds. The goal here is really to assess what options are available for you and what might be the most helpful to help your specific business, you know, rebuild, or maybe help with cash flow at the moment. I mean, maybe you're crushing it and you haven't grown this fast, and it's tough. So it could happen both ways. So when we look at capital during the crisis, it's in many ways kind of figuring out how it compares to capital during normal times. So when you look at cash flow, figuring out where specifically you're seeing gaps can help you be more targeted in how you approach and apply for various funding opportunities, right? So a lot of underwriters' concerns are how well do you understand your business? So if you're able to articulate, I'm having a gap in cash flow because my suppliers or my vendors changed their payment terms, I'm not getting paid as quick. And if you haven't run a cash flow report or really looked at a cash flow statement for your business, I would absolutely advocate for that. If it's whether it's QuickBooks or some other software, I would make sure your monthly interim statements are updated and that you have a pretty good hold on where you're at from a cash standpoint and just overall balance and P&L standpoint. You'd actually be pretty surprised how business owners aren't too sure of where they are on a day-to-day. So the big thing about it, the cash flow report specifically, is when you're pulling cash flow reports from QuickBooks, they're really going to highlight what you spend money on. So you're going to have your fixed costs, rent, things like that aren't going to change. But where you're really going to see changes are your variable costs, like your vendor payments, incoming cash, sales, payments made to you, and even like return on investments that you might have for the business. So what I would do is try to do it from the beginning of the year to here. If you can pull interim statements and see how you've changed in different areas, more expectedly than not, your fixed expenses are going to stay the same, but I'm sure your variable expenses have changed, and that's really where you want to have a grasp on that, and really just know where your money's coming from, because that's going to help you shift your marketing standpoint if you see more money coming from different channels at this time. So this is when you're considering available funding right now. I know a lot of business owners are looking at different forms of capital along with PPP. The biggest thing was obviously the Paycheck Protection Program. And honestly, the big banks aren't really sure how they're going to do the forgiveness yet. We know here's the parameters we want to meet, but how are we going to do it? So track, right? Look at how you track that spending. If you're using it for payroll, just keep your payroll reports, because PPP, one thing that you have to remember is banks, if you go for a loan right now, they're going to count that PPP as a loan against you until that's forgiven, right? So let's say you got a $50,000 PPP loan and you apply for a building loan right now. Unless that PPP loan is forgiven, the bank's going to look at that PPP loan and basically amortize it out over 2 years and say, hey, at this point, since it's not forgiven, we're going to consider that you guys have a $2,600 a month payment, and that's going to hurt you in getting the building at the time. So track that spending, especially if you think you have other, capital needs coming up. Track that, because when forgiveness comes up, if you can show like, hey, I used it for payroll, I used it for other fixed expenses, rent, utilities, you're going to get it forgiven that much quicker and be able to go after, other capital that you need at the time. And then really just look at other resources. They do have the Main Street Lending Program right now. That's a government-backed program I would check out. If you're in specific trades or fields, I spoke with, I believe it was an HVAC company recently who was in a specific trade group, and that trade group was giving them some different grant opportunities. I mean, I'm not talking, $100,000, but, $10,000, $15,000 that you don't have to pay back, and it can go a long way. Then obviously you have your local and private resources. It's tough to advocate going to a bank when you can maybe get a grant or money that will be forgiven, but it's important to still stay in touch with your bank, because like I said, if another opportunity to either maybe purchase property, or you get a large contract and need a working capital line to kind of fill that cash flow gap while you're ramping it up, it's going to be real important to have these ducks in a row with the PPP in terms of how a bank will look at the underwriting. So along with that is just tell everyone to review their bank relationship as it is. I mean, a lot of people that I speak with they say they're happy with their banking relationship, but the last time they really compared it with anything else that's offered, it's been a while. So be sure that you're reviewing your bank statements, along with your interim statements. Make sure there's no hidden fees in there. I'm talking like monthly fees. If you deposit a lot of cash, some banks charge you to deposit cash. So I'm talking cash deposit fees. Really anything that you think you shouldn't be paying. I mean, obviously, if you have outstanding loans, you could be paying interest on that, but a lot of banks will even do deferments at this time. So it's important to do an overall review, and just doing that could really help add to the profitability of your company. So really the biggest action steps with capital are track spending for any PPP funds you've received. This is the biggest thing for me. If you can just track your payroll, the quicker you can send that in, the easier it's going to be on you. Ideally, I know banks would like to get as many of these forgiven by the end of the year as possible. So a lot of that's going to come with how prepared business owners are with the documentation. And don't be afraid to look into additional opportunities for funding. Like I said, the trades, different trade groups have funding opportunities. Different, non banks have funding opportunities. If you ever have questions about alternative funding opportunities, feel free to contact me and I can point you in the right direction. Even though it most likely won't be with Wells Fargo, I do have a lot of contacts with local industry reps and whatnot. And talk to your banker about fees and loan terms. If you don't have a specific banker when you go into a branch and you're a business owner, then ask the question, is this the right bank for me, right? I mean, if you're going into a branch and not able to speak with someone who's well-versed in business and dealing with business accounts and, cash flow cycles of, receivables, payables, and gaps you might experience, then you might need to either switch branches or even switch banks, because you're going to want someone that's an advocate on your side and can get ahead of the ball and be more proactive than reactive in these situations. So, and a couple more things here, just in the last few slides. I know we covered a little bit today on, capital and marketing, but overall right now, the situation is really just changing constantly. And the biggest thing your business needs is a short-term thinker right now. So you always want to keep the future in mind, but we're caused to pivot so much on the short term right now that we really have to stay on our toes. And like all crises in the past, whether it's been economic or even, illness or even war, if you look at World War II, World War I, there's always been an upturn, right? So every downturn is experiencing an upturn. It's just important that we keep that in mind. And if you like today's presentation, we do have a lot of different resources. I'll send out to Carly so she can send this out. It has a lot of featured articles weekly, a lot of good optimism surveys from business owners around the country. So I'll make sure that we send this out and you guys can look at resources as they come in. And then this is just for any Wells Fargo customers that want additional resources, but I know you guys have my information on here and I'm happy to help you out anytime. So if you ever do have questions about, hey, my current bank is doing this, is this normal? Or I want to look into doing this, is this normal? I'll shoot you straight and let you know kind of what the deal is. And that's about it. So a little bit shorter than last time. I think I'm right on about 25 minutes.
Thanks, Kyle. I did want to ask a couple follow-up questions. You talked about making sure that it's the right bank for you. So what would you say are some of the best initial questions or ways to kind of navigate that when customers are meeting with different banks and trying to figure out the best fit for them?
I think it's all about gaining familiarity, right? Like it's almost like any relationship. If you're like, I know growing up when I would go into, but before online banking was huge, when I would go into the bank and needed something, I would almost sit with a different person every time. And I mean, that's fine when I'm 16 years old and don't have much going on in my financial life. But when you're running a business that's doing, $1 million plus revenue a year, you're going to want someone that you really don't have to explain things to. You have a good in-depth conversation one time with them about, hey, here's my business, here's how I operate. But then after that, you can come to them and say, hey, I have an opportunity with so-and-so. And it just honestly cuts down a lot of the BS. And then you have an advocate working for you. Banks, a lot of major banks are relationship banks. So they want to work with people they know. So if you have a banker that's an advocate for you when it comes time to maybe look at more extensive credit deals, you'll be in that much better of a situation for having a relationship with a bank.
Definitely. I appreciate that. You did mention also different grant opportunities, and while they're not maybe large grant programs, that there are smaller grants available. Any tips or tricks at all for people that are looking into those? Any great places to start if people have not previously done any grant writing at all?
Yeah, I would definitely check out the Main Street Lending Program. I know that's a very easy application process. And if you're involved with any trade groups, for example, the guy I with the HVAC company, I think it was like a water cooler and heating association of Arizona or something, but he filled out a one-page application and got something like 11,500. And so if you're involved in any specific trades like that, I would look locally to organizations because a lot of them have their own initiatives right now.
Wow, awesome. Any other questions at all for Kyle? Please feel free to post in the chat while we're here for one more minute. As Kyle mentioned, I will be sending out, he'll get over to me a copy of those slides, I believe, correct, and we'll send those out with the recording and Kyle's contact information, as well as if you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to reach out. He is a wealth of information and we'll make sure that you guys feel comfortable with all your banking needs. So thank you, Kyle, so much for joining today. We really appreciate you sharing all this information with everyone.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you so much. And please feel free to reach out anytime with questions.
Awesome. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.